In this final video, we're going to go over another factoring method that is used a lot with polynomials called factoring by grouping. You use this when you have 4 or more terms and there's not a GCF that you can factor out. You still always want to look for GCF first when starting your problems. So if I look at number 1, the only number that those are divisible by is 1. So that wouldn't be a GCF because it would leave it the same. And then not all of them have an X or Y, so there's no GCF. So I'm going to do something a little different where I group 2 of the terms together and then I try to factor from there. So I'm going to group 6xy plus 2y. And then here I'm going to rewrite the minus 3x minus 1 as plus, and then I'm going to group the negative 3x minus 1. So it's like dividing it into 2 separate groups, and then from there you can look for greatest common factor from the smaller groups to factor out. So now if you look at 6xy and 2y, I notice that those are both divisible by 2, and they both have a y. So now I can take out a GCF. So then here, if I divide this by 2y, I get 3x, because the y's would cancel. This one, they're both canceled, so I'm left with 2y divided by 2y, which is just 1. Now, in my second factor, if I take out a GCF, the only thing that those are divisible by is 1, but since I've noticed they're both negative, I can actually take out a negative 1. So negative 3x divided by negative 1 would be positive 3x, and negative 1 divided by negative 1 is positive 1. Look at what happens here. Here, if you notice, the 2 factors that are in parentheses are the same. They're both 3x plus 1. So when this happens, it's very easy to write your answer. I'm going to take the ones that are in front, so the 2y minus 1. And that goes in its own factor. And my second factor are the ones they have in common, the 3x plus 1. Since those were the same. Now, if you look at number 2, I don't see a greatest common factor right now, so I'm going to try factoring by grouping since there's 4 more terms. So I'm going to group the 3a cubed minus 6a squared, and I'm going to group the 2a minus 4. From there, I'm going to look for GCFs to take out. So here I can take out a 3 and an a squared. If I divide this one, I get a. If I divide this one, I get negative 2 because the a squareds cancel. On my next parentheses, both of those are divisible by 2, so I can factor out a 2. Here I'll get a. Here I'll get negative 2. Now notice again, in parentheses, we have the same thing. We have a minus 2 and a minus 2. So I'm going to factor out the first terms, which are the 3a squared and the positive 2. So in its own parentheses, that becomes 3a squared plus 2. And in my second parentheses, I'm going to put that common factor they both have, which is the a minus 2. And this is called factoring by grouping. You use it when you have 4 or more terms. So you're dividing the 4 terms into 2 little groups, and then once you have those 2 little groups, you're taking out a greatest common factor. If you notice that the parentheses from each one has the same thing, then you can use whatever's in front of those parentheses in its own factor, and what comes out twice as its own.